Okay, well, welcome. In this power half an hour, I suppose, we're going to be talking about sales and getting into sales and just starting off really getting a context of, why people don't like sales and also how we can move from, oh, it's a bit awkward through to being more comfortable with sales. So if at any point you've got any questions, Janet, or you already have a question, please feel free to jump in with that. If not, I will start and sort of give people a context. So when we're thinking about sales, people genuinely cringe. And it's like, oh, we've got that scenario. So why do we do that? And if we, interesting exercise is to think about the fact of, okay, when we think of salespeople, what are some of the words that come to mind? What are the sort of personalities of a salesperson that we typically would have? And it's a rhetorical question, Janet, unless you want to jump in. Typically, people come up with untrustworthy, a little bit slimy, maybe pushy, areas like that. And then when we say, okay, all right, well, that's the general concept of it. Clearly, in our own mindset, we don't want to be that person. So we want to move away from that. And when we think of ourselves, typically, we would say probably we're professional, we're trustworthy, we have a great product, we're honest, etc., etc. But as business owners, what we forget is the fact that number one thing we have to do to have a business is sell stuff. So if we're at a concept of feeling it's a bit yucky being salespeople, but actually we're a salesperson and we believe ourselves to be different to that, we've got to get over that context, because generally, we've got the context that most business owners are honest and are trustworthy and are doing a natural job. And so when we're speaking with people, we shouldn't really be selling them. What we should be doing is giving them information about what they want to buy. So the context is that actually in sales, as long as we have our right people in front of us, then we don't have to be salesy people. So when we're thinking about that, it comes actually down to the people in front of us, which comes from our target marketing. Now, I'm not going to get into marketing. We did a big piece on that on Monday. If you haven't watched that, go back and watch the video. But it's around the fact of, as long as you're in front of the right person. Now, the right person is a qualified prospect. A qualified prospect is somebody who's looking to buy what you're selling. Now, they're just deciding who to buy it from. So in that context, there is no sale. Because now, if you can imagine, the way in which people buy is completely different to how it was pre the last sort of 10 years or so. When it used to be, you turn up and then salesperson had to be the fountain of knowledge, and it would have to convince you to do something. Actually now, people have already done the research. They already know the product that they want or the service that they want. They may have some more questions, but they roughly know exactly what they want. And in that context, it's you as the conduit of taking that person and advising and confirming what they believe is correct and confirming that, but then moving through to the fact of just being that person who says, well, actually, we happen to sell them too. And then it comes down, they would usually understand the product's capabilities, the reason for it, and even most of the time, the pricing. And if they don't know the pricing because of the industry you're in, maybe the pricing isn't that well known, we should be able to give them an idea of what that pricing is without feeling scared. Because funnily enough, it's like, well, if I put my pricing out there, then the competitors know. Your competitors pretty much know what your pricing is anyway, because they're doing the same sort of thing, right? So unless you're a huge organization where you've got extremely high costs, then you're all pretty much going to be around the same price. So that sort of context, well, I can't really say what my pricing is because other people might find out. Well, good, because if you think about it, when you're looking for pricing and you find it, how many more times do you typically then go and look for others? And if nobody else is saying pricing, where do you think they're most likely to come back to? It will be yourselves. So actually putting that pricing out there is a major element of getting people to trust you. First of all, they've got to obviously find you, and that's again down to the marketing. But once they have and they've done the research, they want to buy. So in that context, when we're thinking about it, the salesy piece is, I don't want to talk about pricing because I feel like I'm ripping them off. Well, if you feel like that, it's probably more down to you than it is them, which is why you can buy things which are pretty much very similar, and the price range could be 2, 3, 4 times the price. I mean, if we think about it, logically, you would buy the most cost-effective thing for what you need. But actually, the reality is we buy it on emotion and then prove it through logic. So when we buy an emotion, and 80% is the emotion to want to buy to start off with, we can prove this by the fact that nobody drives around in a £7,000 car. You can buy a car for £7,000, £8,000 brand new, yet people go out and buy Rolls Royces. You know, it's an emotional purchase. So when we're thinking about that, if we're delivering from a sales perspective what they require, then the emotion will come through with that. So for example, as we take this, the first element of sales is really understanding the individual, understanding what it is, because most people's products and services provide a number of benefits or features. Now, some people may require all of them, but typically there'll be 1 or 2 things that people specifically want to gain from using your product or service. So what we need to do in sales is, the first point is build an understanding of what that is. And by doing so, at the same time, building up a relationship. Now, to do that, just like anybody, building a relationship comes from feeling that person understands me, that person gets me, and to get somebody, we need to be able to have a conversation. Now, the conversation itself, what do most people like talking about? Themselves. So if we ask questions about them first and foremost to get an understanding, then that can put us at ease. So you can really pick out your pain points. Now, some people use questioning lines of, well, I'm going to lead them down to a point where they'll feel stupid if they said no, kind of scenario. We don't want to do that. What we want to uncover is the emotion behind that. So questions that actually go a little bit deeper. And as we go through the questions, we ask the first question, which might be a top level one. So, what is it that you're particularly looking for, or what are you looking to achieve, and that sort of stuff. But then we go down further, and once we understand what that is, we can start to ask questions about why. Why is that important to you? And when we get to the why that's important, you typically would get a veneer answer, i.e. surface level answer. Well, it will save me some time. Okay, great. So we want to dig a little bit deeper. And this is the questioning, is getting deeper and deeper until we hit the emotion. So, I'm looking to use somebody's services because actually, I'm just going to use a virtual PA. It's just something that springs to mind. So I want to use a virtual PA. Why do I want to use a virtual PA? Well, to help me out with some of my, let's just say, administration. Well, okay, that's great. So we provide administration support. And can I understand, if you've got that administration support, why do you need it? Well, I don't know how to do things, or it takes me a long time. Okay, great. So it takes you a long time to do this. So roughly how long are you spending on it? About 2 hours a week. Great, okay. And with those 2 hours, if you're not doing this administration, what else would you be doing? So we're digging a little bit deeper now into the next level. Well, actually, I'll spend more time in sales. Let's go with that, since it's the topic of the day. So I'm spending more time in sales. Fantastic. Okay, and if you were to spend more time in sales, what would you look to achieve with those 2 hours a week? Well, I'd probably generate about 3 or 4 leads. Fantastic. Okay, so out of those 3 or 4 leads, how many would you convert? So again, we're digging deeper and digging deeper. And you can get into a conversion, maybe it's 1, and then I sell £3,000. Great, okay, so at that pricing point, that actually by doing the 2 hours a week, that person's going to create £3,000 worth of revenue. So that's still pretty surface level. What we can do, if they've said maybe just time in general, so I can spend more time with the family. Now that's a really emotional one. Oh, great. Okay, so you spent 2 more hours with the family. What would you do? Well, I'd take my child swimming. Now, we're in real emotion space. Okay, so by me, providing you this service, you can take your child swimming once a week. How cool would that be? Right? Now money pretty much wouldn't be any objection at all, because I'm getting that relation. You see how it links together of just not taking, oh, well, I want to buy some admin, oh, it's £25 an hour, do you want it or not? It's moving it through to get to that emotion. And when we think about that in that context, we go back to you being a salesperson. how cool is it to be a salesperson where you give people time to go swimming with their children? I want to be a salesperson, right? That's a great thing to do. And it's that mindset shift that we have when we understand what we're providing will actually give people changes to their lives. And that's fundamentally what we want to be able to provide. So that is sales. You are changing people's lives because your product or service changes people's lives for the better, one would hope. In that context, I don't believe there's any products out there. Well, maybe if you sold cigarettes or something. But anyway, in that context, it's all around the fact of actually helping people to get to a better place. So we've got like that. Actually, I want to be in sales all the time. So when we're thinking of the element of selling, again, with the mindset, don't really like sales, we're all salespeople, whether we own a business or not. Because actually, and I'm going to refer now, and if you haven't read this, please read it if you've got a real sort of cloud over the fact of being a salesperson. This is a fantastic book. It's called To Sell is Human by Daniel H. Pink. He's done a number of books, but this, he also did When and Drive. But this one, and spoiler alert, I'm going to give a couple of stories out of here. But the fundamentals are that as humans, we are salespeople. And what I mean by that, when we take it to the consideration that I would like somebody to do something I would like them to do, right? That's the fundamentals of sales, because obviously I want to sell them a product. We do it all the time. If you've ever been out with friends, choosing which restaurant to go to. If you have children, convincing them to tidy their room. That is sales, because we've got something that we would like them to do. It will benefit them, but also benefit us. So it's a two-way street, and that's how we are all in sales. There are many more things in that, but pretty much every time you have a conversation with any other human, and you have a predetermined thing that you'd like to do, and then they do it, that's sales. So in that context, we're selling all the time. We're just not labeling it as such. Maybe I convinced somebody to do it, or I had a great idea and everyone thought it was a great idea. It's the same thing. So when we're taking it in that context, everybody should be comfortable being in sales, because what we have helps people, and as long as we're confirmed that we're in front of the right people, then it's an easy process to follow. Now, talking of process, one of the fundamentals of sales is to be a great salesperson. And without, I'm not trying to say I'm great or anything like that, but I was in sales for like 20 years. So I've sold stuff for £2, and I've sold stuff for £650 million. Okay, so I've got a broad experience of that. But every single time, and I wasn't the greatest salesperson, but what I did, and all the great salespeople that I met over those 20 years, the best people followed their own process. So what is a sales process? Well, quite simply, it's, okay, I'm going to get best practice at each stage, and then I'll follow it. It really is that simple. So it may even be, depending, if you have a shop or you take inbound calls, it may be the starting point of, how do I answer the phone? Okay, there's going to be the best way of doing that. And if you're on your own, still follow the process. So here at Action Coach, we have lots of processes, and I still follow, I've been doing this over 6 years, I still follow the same process that I have done on over 400 occasions. I still have my checklist, because I don't want to miss anything, because I know following that checklist leads to the greatest results in terms of conversion and movement and so on and so forth. So what I would encourage you to do is think of the stages of the customer journey. The customer journey, of course, being from initial contact right the way through to saying goodbye. Maybe sometimes you might have a rolling contract, or it might just be a one-off purchase, but there will be a start and there will be a finish. Now, sometimes the finish could be years away if it's a 3-year contract or a 5-year contract, but what are all the stages? And as we go through those stages, literally work out what is the best practice. And if you like a script, script it. If you don't like a script, use a checklist. So you've got the bullet points of every single thing you want to say and every single piece of information you'd like to gain. And in asking these questions, when I'm in meetings, I have my checklist and they can see it. that I'm actually being professional because I'm following the process. I want to make sure I give you the best result from having our interaction. But with all of these questions, it needs to be clear that there's a reason for that question, that you're actually progressing rather than asking just random questions, which again, when you have your checklist, you'll be able to order them in a logical or sensible, an understandable way. So simply to do this, when I'm talking about it, people are, well, how do I actually physically do that? What I would suggest is literally write down on a piece of paper, name each stage. Then when you have each stage, you can box it up and put it into a flow chart or something like that, and then work out, can I provide or should I have a checklist or a script for this part? Now, if you're having conversations face to face, obviously using a script is a little bit challenging. But again, if you have a notebook, there's nothing wrong with having a checklist printed out at the side. I used to do it all the time. I used to print out multiple copies, and then on the left-hand side of my notebook, I'd have the questions or the checklist, and then on the right-hand side, I would then use that obviously to take down the answers. And I would refer back as I went over page to page. But as we go through this, so stage one, introduction. So that might be over the telephone call. So how do I answer the phone? What are the initial questions that I want to get from that person? And what information typically would they like to know? So it's not just about getting the information, it's how do we disseminate the information they typically would like to understand too. And even the question as we go through sales, and we reach that point, they're like, oh yeah, send me an email. Maybe have a template of that email already set up, which you can then personalize for the individual. Depending on the level of inquiries that you have, you may want to, you may not be able to personalize every single one if you're getting inquiries every sort of minute. But if you get inquiries, 1 or 2 a day or less, then you can really write that out. But have the bulk of it already written, because you'll know the questions people ask. In fact, it's an excellent exercise to go through and say at each stage, what typically do people ask? Well, how much is it? How quickly can I get booked in? How quickly will it arrive? What else do you need to know? What are the stages of the sales process? If we can explain these things and have those already determined, rather than going, even though you know this information, if you're not necessarily doing it on a regular basis, and a regular basis will be, 3, 4, 5 times a day, this information is really, really important to gather down. So as we go through, we want to understand what information that they will require, what information you'll require, and how do you explain the next step. And this is a critical piece because quite often we've all had, sort of sales that just hang there. Well, they said they'd give them a call back next week, or they're going to come back in September, or whatever it might be. And that's fine, but what we want to do is introduce what I call an upfront contract. So an upfront contract is purely an agreement between you and the person. That's it, right? It's verbal. So as we go through, for example, right, okay, so I've got the information, you've got the information, I need to go and check with a couple of people or whatever that might be, or I need to check with my wife or, check the diary, whatever it is that's going to delay it. I can't do it right now. Okay, that's fine. So the questions there will be, okay, that's great, no problem at all. And how long do you think you'd need for that? Well, let's say, where are we today? Wednesday. Let's say Friday. Give me a call on Friday. Okay, that's great, no problem at all. We can do that. On Friday, we want to get the information of when they're going to be available. It's really straightforward stuff, but hardly anyone ever does this. So, okay, morning's afternoon on Friday. Obviously, we all want to go home a bit early on Friday, or we've got the weekend on our mind. Is the morning the best time? Or something like that. And they'll give you an idea of when that is. Fantastic. Okay, all right. So about 10 o'clock in the morning, does that work for you, or what's the best time? So we give a suggestion, but we empower them to allow them to make a choice still. Okay, well, actually 11:30. Great, fantastic. So I will give you a call at 11:30. Now, just so I don't get blocked out with other things, I'm going to put it in my calendar and I'm going to invite you for that 5, 10-minute call, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, however long that call needs to be. And you're going to send them a calendar invite. And as you send them the calendar invite, the first word you're going to put on the calendar invite in brackets is confirmed. Because I'm sure if you think about it, how many things get done that are in your calendar versus how many things that get done that aren't in your calendar, I imagine there's a big discrepancy, right? So, and we got the word confirmed, which gives a little bit more feeling around the fact, oh, crikey, yeah, well, I agreed to that. I said, I gave my word, that's part of the contract. Fantastic. Now that's really good, and it works really, really well if you follow it up with two things. First thing is, I'm putting in my calendar, I'm going to send you the invite. Can you just click yes, you'll attend when you get it through? Again, they're physically doing something that's confirming it's in the diary. The second thing is, we need to acknowledge that life happens. And with the context of, what if they don't answer the phone? Because surprise, surprise, that sometimes happens, right? So what if they don't answer the phone? So let's put it up front. Let's say, you know what, Jim, sometimes life happens, and if for whatever reason you can't make that call, what should I do? And you just ask them, you ask their permission to follow them up. And they'll probably say, oh, well, well, give me a call on Monday. Fantastic. All right. So when you're ringing them back up, now we haven't got the sense of, oh, I'm being salesy because I'm chasing them. They've already given permission for you, if the call didn't happen, to call them again. And in that way, again, we've not got that sense. And then that call, should it happen on the Monday, it's, hey, Jim, just following up. If you have to leave a voicemail, as we agreed, obviously missed Friday, just good. And the emotional pressure on them is out of just common decency to call you back. Now, I'm not saying it works 100%, but it's damn sure more than just give me a call on Friday does. Does that make sense? So it's a really good way, upfront contract. And you do that every stage, every single stage, especially when we get to, okay, I'll send the proposal over, or I'll give you a quote and have a think about it, and we'll follow up from there, because that's the most sort of salesy piece, I suppose, that most people get stuck on. Oh, I don't know how often to chase, and am I going to be hassling them and all that? It takes all of that away. All of that away. And just as a footnote, because obviously maybe you haven't done that and you've got some prospects in the pipeline that are just hanging around. The question I get asked a lot is, how many times do I call, or how many times is too many times? And the answer is, until they say it's too many times. So that is simple. And I'm sure we've all been in a position that actually, when we think about it, with the 8 hours we have in a day, or maybe more, maybe a few less for some people, you're calling at 1 second. I can't do the maths on how many seconds it is in 8 hours, but whatever it is, it's going to be, well, that's going to annoy me now. So, so it's 480, anyway, whatever that is, 4,800 seconds that are in a day. You're going to call in one of them. Now, the likelihood is they're doing something else. So in terms of calling them back, either ask when's the best time from the person who answers the phone, or if when they answer the phone is now a good time. Because the most probability is it's not. Because they've got 4,000 seconds and you happen to call in one of them. So again, when we're thinking about how to put that through, it's all about, again, seeking permission first and having a conversation. I'm sure when you ring your friends, it's like, hi, how you doing? Yeah, are you okay to speak? All of this sort of stuff, you ring somebody out of the blue. It's exactly the same when we're doing in sales as we're going through. So when we're considering all of those elements, I just wanted today to give you a high level of some of the core considerations. First is mindset. It's okay to do sales. We do it all the time. As long as we've got the right person in front of us, and if we haven't, then you need to sort out your marketing. But when we have, it's okay to talk about price. They want to know. It's okay to talk about delivery times or schedules or things that might be a little bit considerate otherwise if you haven't got that premise. It's okay. That's what they want. They've already done the research. The second element is have a process, because it will help you and it will help them. As we follow the process, you'll get better and better. And don't forget to revise. Just because you wrote it once doesn't make it perfect. So as we go through, you can revise it. And sometimes, just depending on where your conversion rate is, you may want to tweak it. Just try something different. Put something new in. See what happens. On this platform, you'll have thousands of ideas of what to do as we go through and when to do it. And they all work. It's just whether they all work for you in the context of what you do. So there's enough to actually get some of the pieces through. And having that structure will make a lot of sense to the person as well, that you're not flitting around. If you have a structure, oh, okay, this person's professional, so you're increasing your credibility as you go through. And remember, each of those points, to move from one to the other, we want to get our upfront contract. This will enable everybody to be comfortable with the fact that, yes, I'm going to call back. And it's okay. And you're going to answer the phone. And if you don't answer the phone, we know what to do. And setting those timelines so everybody's comfortable with it. So those are the key elements I wanted to get through today. I've got a few minutes spare. And I don't know, Janet, if you've got any questions or any sort of comments, reflections on what you've heard today.
Very helpful. I like the idea of the checklist. I do sort of have a checklist when I'm speaking to somebody online, but I'm seeing somebody this afternoon face to face, and I wasn't going to take a checklist. Now I will. Because we forget things, don't we? We get carried away with the conversation.
That's it.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you. I think children are the best salespeople. If they want something, they give you every reason why they should have it. I've actually had a client who, she came to me and she said, I can't sell, I hate selling. And I said to her, just do what you're doing, speak enthusiastically about your product, come across authentically. And do you know what? She's doing so well. She won an award last year. So
Brilliant.
yeah, and it is that word. So I used to be in sales, so I used to have a physical product which I loved, but I would only sell something that I absolutely believed in, and I think it's just coming across being authentic.
Yeah,
And if you don't know the answer to something, just say you don't know.
absolutely. Absolutely. And that's a great one. And a really good liner I learned very early on. I started my sort of sales career in technology and knew nothing about technology. So a lot of the times I didn't know what I was talking about. And one of the greatest responses to something that you don't know the answer to is, wow, do you know what? I've never been asked that before.
Yeah,
Now I'm going to have to take some time and work what that is, and I'll come back to you on that.
yeah,
It's such a great line because it makes them think, oh, I've noticed something nobody else ever has. Now,
yeah,
it works every single time. So
yeah.
I would encourage, yeah, absolutely. If you get stuck, 100% be authentic and say, honesty is the best policy.
It is, yeah. And with pricing, I did toy with the idea of should I put my prices on my website? Some people said yes, some people said absolutely no. But I love the transparency, and I still notice that a lot of people don't go and check out the prices.
Right.
I assume that they've already done that, and then I say, have you had a look at my website? Oh no, I found you somewhere else.
Right.
So yeah, I do. I have had obviously I'm doing something wrong because I've had people come to me for a consultation call and it's the sticking point has been a price.
Okay.
So I need to work on something there. There's some element missing.
Yeah. And so in your questioning, I would suggest if you're getting stuck on price, you haven't got to the emotional reason why they want to purchase.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
in an extreme example, if there was a pill to save a life, then you'd find the money, right? It's as simple
yeah.
as that.
If you want it badly enough, yeah,
So let's understand what that bad is. So as we go through, so why did you choose, or why have you chosen us? And what's important to you about having this? Why is it important to you for having this? And here's a great question you can throw in, which is always around the fact of, okay, so if you don't go ahead, what's the consequence?
Oh, I always ask that. Where will you be in 6 months' time or a year's time? And when they reflect on that, they're like, oh my goodness, I need to do something. But I find because I'm helping women that are full of self-doubt, they're people pleasers, they're not used to putting themselves first, they're not used to investing in themselves. I have that barrier. It's the
Mhm.
thing that I'm trying to help them with is the thing that's stopping them from coming to me.
Yeah,
I know
absolutely.
that sounds like a terrible excuse.
Well, what's interesting about that, it's all about framing and mindset. I'm just conscious of time, so we've only got a few seconds left. It's about mindset context of, I get that you're doubting yourself and that you're not investing in yourself and blah, 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 but you've just invested your time to speak to me,
Yes.
right? So there is a want and a need and a desire to do that. So imagine having that but in an hour or 3 hours or twice a week or whatever the frequency is, what do you think you would feel like? And it's
Oh, I love that. I'm going to use that.
moving it into the future. 'Cause
Yes.
there's two elements. People either want to move away from stuff or they want to move towards stuff.
Yeah.
I don't want to be poor. I want to be rich. Or it's going
Yes.
to be one of those. Moving away from stuff is very short term because once you get a little bit of movement, oh, I'm all right again. It's like losing a bit of weight and then you're like, oh, I'm okay. And then you go back to eating what you were before. Whereas I want to go on Ninja Warrior, it's completely different, right?
Yeah.
So it's having that context. So imagine what would it be like, put them in the future state,
Yes. Yeah.
what I would say. Well, listen, thank you very much for your contribution. That was lovely and really exciting. If you've got anything else, feel free to sort of DM me or whatever we do on the platform, have a chat and whatever, or follow me and all that sort of wonderful stuff. And I look forward to next time and seeing you all again.
That's really helpful. Thank you so much for your time. Thank
Very
you.
well. Take care. All right. Bye for
Bye.
now.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.